Good morning and welcome to another segment of All Things Boys, hosted by me, Dedrick Sims, CEO of the Sims-Fayola Foundation. Today we're going to be talking, we're going to be talking about the different stages of adolescence, male adolescence. We're going to look at an overview of what the three stages are, and then we're going to focus specifically on the first stage, which is ages 9 through 12. So this typically, it was when around boys get into like the fifth or sixth grade, right? So we'll start off with that. Remember, you can catch these sessions live every Saturday. Although I'm going to announce now, I'm going to move to every other Saturday, so every 2 weeks. We're going to do All Things Boys, so we can kind of stretch the material out over the entire year. But again, this is a forum to where we talk about boys. Sometimes we talk about it in terms of relationships, but most oftenly it's about how are boys naturally wired, right? So we get into medical issues about boys. As like last couple of weeks, we talked about self-esteem and how boys' self-esteem suffer or how it's viewed by others. So we're going to continue along that path, and we're going to do a review over the last couple of weeks. I'm going to ask you if you have any questions that you can kind of type about what are you thinking about what we discussed over the last couple of weeks, and then we're going to move into the stages of adolescence males. So let's go back and let's think about over the last couple of weeks. We talked about this idea of the male fragile ego, and how people think that boys are a lot tougher than they think, right? I mean, than they actually are. They say that because young men, play football or basketball, a lot of contact sports, that males must be tough. I think sometimes females think the same thing, that sometimes, you try to get something across to a guy, or maybe you go through a relationship breakup and the guy seems like he doesn't care. And so there's a perception that young men are tough, but the truth is that physically we may be tough, but mentally we are not so tough. It's not so complicated. It's not because we are just weak inherently. It's because there are things, the way our brains are wired, coupled with testosterone, kind of puts us at a disadvantage when it comes to emotions. So let's review that a little bit, and then I'm gonna ask you some questions about it, and then we're going to move into the adolescent stage of 9 through 12 and what to expect from boys during that age. So remember, we talked about that the male brain is definitely vulnerable to psychiatric disorders, sociopathic behavior, and it's because we compartmentalize things, right? We talked earlier about how boys compartmentalize emotions in one side and reasoning in the other side, and that sometimes this crosstalk doesn't always happen or happen as well as it does with with females, which is why oftentimes when men go through things, it's either we're talking about it and trying to reason and be rational with you about it, or we are just in this hyper emotional state to where that's all we can see, right? Thus you get boys blowing up in classroom, upset, walking out, storming out the house, because we can't deal with, it's tough to deal with the rational part of a conversation, and also the emotional piece as well. So which is why you see, guys say, look, I just need to get out of the house and take a ride, take a drive, take a walk. Like, ladies, you got to let them go, right? Teachers, you got to let the boy process a little bit, right? Parents, you got to let your boy process a little bit, because we're trying to figure out which compartment that we're going to kind of exist in. So you got to let that happen, right? So we move down to, because of this, boys tend to suffer learning disabilities more than girls, and tend to have more academic issues, because school is both a reasoning and an emotional place, and because it is, not inability to, but lower capacity to be able to crosstalk between the rational and the emotional. Sometimes we don't do well in school. And this was something interesting as well. I mean, we talked about this, that because boys value relationships so much, and because they value relationships with teachers, parents, principals, whatever, that research showed that there tend to be a significant increase in IQ scores for young men when they come from homes with loving moms, right? The research showed that it didn't make a difference between girls. Girls can have a hostile environment at home or a loving environment at home, and they tend to kind of score the same in terms of intelligence tests. But with boys, there was a significant difference between boys who came from a loving home with a loving mother and ones that didn't. So what does that mean to me as an educator? That means that, that relationship, if I have a relationship, a significant relationship with a young man, especially if it's a positive relationship, if that relationship is affected in a negative way, then you'll tend to see, some fallout in the young man. I mean, he could pull away from school. He could, try to skip your class. I mean, he could become disruptive in the class because now he's in that emotional compartment to where the reasoning is not even, kind of trickling over a bit, and he's just acting out. He's acting out. And especially when you think about this grade, this age, 9 to 12, like, their logic, human logic hasn't even really developed yet. That prefrontal cortex is still way underdeveloped. It doesn't even happen until age 26. So think about that, and we also talked about that because of this, boys have a harder time, or men in general have a harder time at recovering from divorces, from relationship breakups, because we tend to, like, once we get it, and then we start to feel those emotions in that emotional compartment, and we stay there. It's like being in a hot sauna, like in a hot steam room, where all you can feel is that steam and that heat. And so with us, all we can feel is that emotion, right? We start thinking about the breakup, the loneliness, the loss, trying to say, well, this breakup is for the best, or this lost relationship is for the best for both of us. That's not happening right now, right? It's all about the loss, all about the emotion. And that's what happens, even in class, which is why you see boys act out the way they do. Like, they'll blow up in the classrooms because, that's all they feel, right now. See, this is a disadvantage for males when it comes to being in a relationship, because a female can actually break up with you while you're actually in the relationship and you never even know it, right? It's like they can be going through the process of breaking up and all you think is that you're having these little arguments, but one day they say, well, I'm done, and then, it catches you by surprise because, you were trying to fix it, or thinking that it was just small arguments, when it was really something big. And then, see, they've gone through all this, right? I call it cheating, actually, because they go through this emotion, or they go through this breakup with the benefit of having you in their presence. So even when they feel lonely, they're able to connect back with you because you're right there. But not us. Like, when they finally get done and they're done, they're done. And then, all the calling and the texting and everything doesn't even work anymore. But you're trying to latch on to, that emotional connection that you need, in order to kind of diffuse or to dilute what you're going through, but it's not there. And so that's why you tend to have a higher rate of male suicide also during these times, during breakups, because there are no structures for us to grab onto. We're hyper compartmentalized in that emotional space, and it takes time to get out of. And sometimes it can be manifested in stalkerish behavior, rapid dialing on the phone, trying to call back over and over again. And then people think you're crazy, but it's not that you're crazy. It's that you're really just going through what the females actually cheated to go through, which is you want that same physical presence there while you try to work out the issues the same way that you were able to. But anyway, I am like getting way off on that, but it kind of speaks to the makeup of the male brain, which I talked about, which puts us at an emotional disadvantage. Right. So that was 2 weeks ago. So last week we talked about this idea of self-esteem, right, and how the world view self-esteem as it relates to males. Now, we said that boys tend to suffer self-esteem issues during the second decade of their life. So we're talking about age 10 to 20, which fits right into our topic that we're going to talk about for this week. And it can be overwhelming, right? It's like boys may not show it as much as girls, because girls will cry and want to hide, and they'll talk about it. They'll say, well, I got these pimples, or, she's pretty in the eye, or, like, boys tend to not talk about it. They just tend to withdraw, right? So remember, this kind of prompted this whole idea of, we need to save girls, and we need to save girls emotionally through this Take Girls to Work Day. what in essence what was being said was that the research said that, well, because boys are so self-confident in classrooms and they over project themselves in class, that it dilutes the girls and it makes them makes their self-esteem less obvious, right? Or it diminishes their self-esteem. And I was like, what? How are you going to blame boys for the lack of self-esteem of girls? But this was a woman group who did the research. So I don't know, you take what you will from that. But it was crazy. And so much so that they was like, you know what, let's just have this national campaign and let's take our girls to work and let's show them around and all this stuff so we can boost their self-esteem. Meanwhile, we're going to leave boys where they are, because there was this false perception that boys had good self-esteem because of projecting and the bravado and peacocking, things that boys naturally do as boys because of testosterone. But you can see now and understand the lack of research that went behind, I guess, understanding that went behind that research. Like, it just, I guess if you had a better understanding of how testosterone affects men or individual period, then you would understand that. So this goes into this idea. This goes into this idea of, this experiment where there was this group of ladies who took testosterone and they moved from this caring and want to be belonging to self-sufficient and let me do it. So it proved the power of testosterone. And see, this is good stuff, guys. I mean, these are golden nuggets that you're getting for free. These are golden nuggets, right? They're saying that, I understand the impact of testosterone on an individual, period, on a boy or a girl. And so it behooves you, if you're in relationships or if you are teaching or if you are in charge of people or kids, to understand this research, to understand the biological implications behind testosterone and estrogen, so that you can make better choices around how to treat somebody. Not necessarily if you're going to deal with them, it's more of how to treat. Right? It's sort of like a bulldog, right? You're not going to walk in the cage with a bulldog, right? Unless you know the dog. Now, if you know the dog, then you walk in. But your natural instinct, like you would naturally react to a bulldog and a poodle very differently. If a bulldog was in a cage and a poodle was in a cage and you had to walk in one to save your life, I'm walking in with the poodle, right? Because I know what's happening with the bulldog, or the potential of what could happen with the bulldog. Poodle may bite you too, but it won't be as bad as the bulldog. What am I saying? I'm saying is that if you understand the impact of the effects of testosterone on people, then if you know that men, like we are testosterone driven, then it helps you to understand how to interact with us or what our tendencies could be. It reduces the likelihood that you will, fall into this judgment space, right? And you will fall more into an understanding space. Now, if you understand and then choose to disassociate yourself with the relationship of the kid or the colleague, then do it on an informed basis and not just on some, whimsical will. Anyway, let's get back to it. Testosterone. Now, let's talk about this. Remember I told you last week that there was this false perception that black men didn't ever suffer from self-esteem issues, and that was based on the notion that self-esteem was measured by bravado, right? Posturing, peacocking. I keep saying this. Well, they were saying that since black males have this tendency to over-project themselves, these are not my words, right? To over-project themselves through, we see it on videos, we bragging about everything, on, cars, we got, brand new cars sitting on 22, 25s, it's so high that you think you're in space, you open your door and you'll commit suicide if you fall out, that kind of stuff. You got gold all on my chest. I got gold all on my, you got all that going on. The world thinks that you're super like you're self-sufficient, like your esteem is not suffering from anything. But you and I both know that's not true. That's not true. But because that was the perception, because that's what we were projecting, the perception was that black men never suffered from any kind of self-esteem issues. Now, and it's crazy because that's how they viewed self-esteem. So if that's the case, then you would never think that men in general probably wouldn't have any self-esteem issues, because most of the time, like we're taught from a very young age not to cry. We're taught to project. We're taught to protect our families. We're taught to be the strong one. And so that doesn't necessarily say to you, it's okay to sit in the corner with a box of Kleenex and cry because of whatever, right? those are the things that girls do, right? Which is why we feel like the girls and women are more fragile, and it plays out in the classroom that way too. It's like teachers will tend to have more patience with girls than they do with boys. I see it all the time. If a teacher says something and the boy asks the question, more than likely the response is, "Did you not hear me the first time I said it?" Right? Well, the research will also tell you biologically that boys don't hear as well, high tones as well as girls, right? And so what that means is that you have to repeat yourself sometimes, and you can't get all frustrated because the boy didn't hear you, right? You have to repeat yourself sometimes. You have to just say, okay, it's my job to be here teaching. He didn't hear me. Let me make the assumption that he didn't hear me, and let me give it back to him rather than demonizing him right away. So that's for a whole nother level in terms of hearing and not being able to hear, right? If you were part of the Sims-Fayola crew, you learned that. All right. So let's go down to what's the culprit, right? What's the culprit that's causing people to look at boys in different ways, treat them different in the classroom, the whole nine, right? Testosterone. Say it with me. Testosterone. Testosterone, the hormone, right? It's the hormone that drives us as men. It causes us to be aggressive. I mean, in the beginning of time or whatever, it still causes us to be able to hunt, protect. We don't have time for fear. It causes us to have these desires for quick fixes, quick interactions. And it goes, again, back to this idea of not being able to, being at an emotional disadvantage to women. Because in order for you to have, this emotional space, right? In order for you to have the emotional part of your brain develop, you have to immerse yourself. You have to immerse yourself in situations. Well, testosterone causes you to want to have these quick interactions, these quick bursts, right? Which is why guys are attracted to sports, right? Everything in sports is quick. When you're playing basketball, it's a quick move. There's your jump shot. Boom. Playing football, you're going to hit the hole if you're running. Those kind of things, right? So boys find their fixes in that. And so I mentioned this too now, even about sex. Now that don't get mad at me. This is what it is. Even when you're talking about sex, like, there's this, preponderance for men to, hit it and quit it. To hit it and quit it. Not that we're quitting you, we're just quitting the act, like we disengage, because that sex is like an act of aggression for us. And so that testosterone is driving that. So we perform the act of aggression, then we disconnect. But ladies tend to kind of linger in the space. I mean, and there's research that'll tell you too that after sex, that ladies tend to have these release of hormones that cause them to linger in the moment for a long, long time. Which is why there's the touching, the rubbing, the kissing. They want to hold you. Even if you go to the grocery store an hour later, it's still, I want to hold your hand. Like they're still reacting to their hormones, but our hormone of testosterone has already been like satisfied. So we've hit it, and then we disengage. Well, what happens when you do that, testosterone causes you to be that way, is that you don't allow yourself to be immersed in emotions for a long time. So you're not sitting around with your woman holding hands and kissing and whatever after sex. Because that will cause you to have to be in this prolonged emotional space, right? And well, testosterone naturally, we're not wired to do that. And so it takes time, it takes practice. So ladies, if we disengage with you after sex, it doesn't mean that we're not caring about it, right? We're just being us, right? Now, if we disengage and then we leave and go, do something else with somebody else, like that's a whole different story. But I'm talking about if we just disengage and we want to go, watch the game or whatever, like we felt like that we've, performed that act of aggression and love, and we've shown our love, and there it is. Testosterone is the culprit, not an excuse, no judgment. It's just data, right? Just data. And hopefully everybody on this Face Talk Live is mature enough to definitely understand that. But testosterone, I mean, it's a biological system that's not built for us to sustain a lot of emotional opportunities, right? Testosterone makes us dominant. It makes us try to be one-upsmanship in conversations. All those things don't endear you to people. Be honest with you, they don't endear you to people. Like, they don't make people want to talk to you because you come across as dominant or you come across as aggressive. Those things you have to learn as you get older to temper those things, right? But if you act naturally from what testosterone does to you, you don't. Like, that doesn't make you attractive to somebody, per se, is what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't. That's why you see boys spitting and, farting on each other and all this stuff when they're younger, right? And that's not attractive. Like, there's no girl sitting in the corner going, oh, my God, I love the way he spit. His fart just smells just like I needed to smell. Like, that's just not what happens. It just kind of puts us at a disadvantage, okay? So quick tension, quick release. I talked about this thing last week about, if you had a scenario where a boy and a girl was walking across the room, they both hit their knee on the edge of a table. The boy would tend to kick and spit and probably hit the table and curse and be like, oh my, whatever, right? And then kind of walk away. The girl would probably fall, cry, and then people would come around and want to, console her. But when all that's happening, they're just immersing themselves in this emotional space, which is okay for girls. But for boys, we don't gonna cry. We don't want anybody to come around us and ask us, hey, are you okay? What's going on? You mean put my arm around your shoulder, that type of stuff. We're like, no, dog, we good. This table's in the way. Again, testosterone, wanting that to be this quick fix, quick release, and you see it in classrooms as well, right? Think about it. Think about it now, teachers. Those of you who are teachers, how many times have you given out an assignment and then there's some boy who's done in like 30 seconds? Or done in like 2 minutes, right? While you got some girl over there backing over there with her glasses on, with her, the mechanical pencil, just working it out for the next 2 hours, right? But we get in and we try to get it done, right? It's that testosterone. All right, so testosterone puts us at a disadvantage, guys and girls, and teachers and principals. And parents. It puts us at a disadvantage, and so hopefully, you get that, right. Again, it's not trying to make excuses. It's just the real. This is stuff you don't learn in school when you're going through teacher education program. You don't learn this kind of stuff in school. To tell me what class you've taken called Testosterone 101. Yeah. All right. So before we move into the next section. All right. Does anyone have any questions? I mean, you can type on the screen, obviously, because I can see, shout out to Roy, Lamar, shout out to Jackie, all those who are on the screen, Alicia, Shonda, shout out to all you. Talk to me. Do you have any questions about this whole testosterone deal, self-esteem, frail male ego, before we move into this conversation about adolescent stages? Talk to me. I feel like a radio talk show host. By the way, I am trying to work on getting this as a monthly TV show as well, through like free media. So I don't know, Denver media, but I'm not sure if it'll go outside of Denver, but we're trying to get it done. Okay. No questions. Everybody's good. Do we all agree? All right. So let's move on to adolescence, the difference, in stages for adolescents males. There are 3 different stages for males as we grow up, right? There's the stage from 9 to 13. There's the stage from 14 to 17, and then there's the stage from 18 to 21. And what happens in those stages are very different from what happens to what happens in the other one. Now there is some overlap, as with life, right? But there are some propensities as well, some tendencies for certain things to happen during that time. So let's move on. So we will focus on stage 1 today. So during this stage, right? Let me get my notes together here. During this stage, the young man is trying to figure out who they are more, right? From 9 to 12, they're trying to figure out from 9 to 13 who they are more. They become more thinking about their maleness and femaleness. They start to notice the difference between males and females, right? They're going through pre-puberty. Sometimes it may set in during this time where they start to, grow pubic hairs and hairs under their arms, and they start to think about their maleness more. So this is a great time for teachers and parents to start having these conversations with young men about what they think men are, right? This is a great time between the ages of 9 to 12 to say, what do you think it means to be a man? Because he's thinking about it, right? He's not verbalizing it or articulating it, but he's thinking about it. So what does it mean to be a man? He'll be seeking some independence. Like this is when they start to push away and try to be a little more independent and, try to do things on their own. They're really trying to show parents that they don't need you as much, although they do. But, they're being driven by this, time in their development to kind of seek some independence. So he'll appear not to need his family as much when he actually does. He would start to break rules outside of the house. Like you start to say, where did my great son go? Where did my well-behaved son go? I mean, he's not going to like be belligerent in the house, but if you tell him don't watch too much TV, if there's a chance that he, there's a scenario where he can watch TV outside of the house, he's going to watch TV outside of the house. It's just him trying to break away and get his independence and trying to form his own identity during this stage. This is one of the toughest times, actually. I mean, it's very emotional, but not as expressive about the emotions. This is when the quietness start to happen. So but again, he would appear not to need the parents, but he would definitely need the emotional safety space of parents, because school's not going to provide that. So we're going to talk about, what is it in school life? How does it play out in school life with his peers, and also with his behavior? So in terms of school life, he would have a little more difficulty in handling failure. I mean, boys act a lot differently during this time, to failing assignments, getting bad, feedback, maybe failing a test. During this time of 9 to 12, they're very sensitive, right? Because they're trying to compare themselves and be competitive against others. He becomes competitive a little more. He would question authority a little more during this time, because again, he's trying to find his own independence and trying to show parents and teachers that, I don't really need you as much, but he actually does. This is also the time where he'll start to debate. Even though cognitively he's not ready to have debates with teachers and parents, he'll try. Because again, it goes back to, this idea of trying to seek my own independence. So that's when they start asking questions, and why, Mom? And what is this? And well, what if I did this? And during this time of 9 to 12. So if you're teachers during that age, that have kids during this age, like, this is definitely some good stuff for you. Like, he'll want to project this idea that he can think for himself, right? He can think for himself, and he can, but not complex issues like, we know that he needs. At this time, he also start to disagree with authority a little more. I mean, you may get your first referral right here. You may get, your first call from your principal or from the teacher saying, hey, Hakeem is not, he's pushing back a little bit. And you're like, not my kid. Well, because this, and during that time from 9 to 12, it has a tendency to happen, now you can say, okay, well, let me just have a conversation with him, and then you can kind of get to the meat of what's going on. Now, this is also a time that because he want to take on this more independence and he want to push back on authority and ask questions, this is where, as a teacher and a parent, this is a good time for you to be able to be a little more flexible and bend a little bit. Not that you are just being, just all of a sudden you're just, permissive of everything. It's not that. It's just that now you hold him accountable to even his choices. So you can say something like, if he said, well, I don't want to do that, you can say, well, okay, well, tell me exactly what you want to do, right? And then once you hear what they want to do, and if it makes sense, then you let them do it, right? But then you hold them accountable. Or you have that same accountability as if you had assigned the assignment, or you gave the task. Like, for example, if you're a parent and you say, hey, I need you to go outside and cut the yard. Say he's 12 years old at this point, right? You got to go outside and cut the yard Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. He may say, well, I don't want to get up Saturday at 8 o'clock to cut the yard. And then you can say, instead of getting mad, right? Because I know we'll say, hey, man, like, I brought you in this world, I'll take you out. But you can say, look, okay, 8 o'clock may be too early for you. Tell me what time you want to cut the yard, right? And if it fits within your schedule, if you say, let me cut at 9:30, okay, cut at 9:30. But you're going to cut it, right? You're still going to cut it according to what those parameters are, right? He'll need more of a challenge at this time between 9 and 12. He'll need more of a challenge. Now, so that's with school life. So if you are a teacher, and the message is, the kid's going to push back at this time. He's trying to find independence. He's going to care more about what his peers are saying, right? He is going to try to find a way to bring more of his voice into directions into his life. If you're a parent, it's the exact same thing. He's going to try to show that he doesn't need you as much during this time, but actually he does, right? Because the world's a very unsafe place emotionally. We already talked about the fragility of the male emotional state during this time. So as it relates to peers, so how is he going to how do peers come into this at this time? So this is where he starts to imitate, right? He'll start to imitate his peers, start wearing the same kind of shoes, asking you, can you buy some Jordans because Billy got Jordans, right? He'll want to drink Mountain Dews because Billy drank Mountain Dews, or unfortunately, if you're in Colorado somewhere, if their kid's smoking weed, he might want to smoke some weed. But this is where they start to really care about what their peers are thinking and start to emulate that, especially the ones who they think are socially accepted, because they want to be accepted as well. Now, listen to this carefully. Now, this is also where they start to do sexual experimentation, and sometimes with boys, right? Let me clear that up. Let me clear it up, right? What I mean is that this is sometimes where boys start to show each other that, their stuff, their junk, right? That you're catching behind you're catching behind the building, with the pants down, looking at each other, or the bathroom or something like that. Like, that's normal. It's normal for boys during this time. It's normal. So don't be alarmed by it. Now, if you walk in the corduroys or let me leave that alone. But anyway, that's normal for young men. He'll hope to find something important. Like, this is where he wants to join a clique or a group, right? And this is where he'll start to pull away from the family a little bit, because he doesn't see the family as that clique, that group that's cool. So he'll want to try to he'll want to try to fit in with different groups. And now this is where he also may go from clique to clique to clique, because again, he's confused. He's trying to figure out who he is. One minute he may want to hang with the kids who he consider smart. Then the next minute he want to hang with the kids who he consider cool. Then the next minute he want to hang with the kids who consider maybe in with the adults or the teachers. Like, he doesn't know at this point. Like, he's just kind of going through trying to figure it out. And so this is he'll try to lean more to what his peers are saying than what parents are saying. Like, he'll question you and say, well, Johnny does this, and it's okay for Johnny to do it. So why can I do it? Those kind of conversations. And then you had those conversations whether Johnny jumped off the bridge. Would you jump off the bridge with Johnny? That's what we get, right? But understanding this kind of research and understanding this kind of knowledge will help us, I think, become better parents and also better teachers and educators, right? Yeah, so they'll tend to go out of the family, but if they pull, if the tendency now is for them to pull away from the family because they don't think the family is cool, this is where the family can now start to become cool. Basically, is to create a structure, a clan-like structure, to where you're supporting their needs, to where you're supporting the boys' needs. So you can do that. You can start maybe going out to the parks or whatever. But this is a time for you as a family to make yourself a lot cooler than his peers, because we all know that peer love or peer attention can come and go, right? But not family love, right? Not family love. He's going to need that because the world's a cold place, and they're going to do something to push him back to you. And if he finds out that he's safer at home, then he's going to have the tendency to emulate what's happening at home rather than emulate what's happening in the streets, right? All right, so this is all time too where media starts to play a big role, in their life. And so media, all the projections, all the comparisons, all the commercials about what beauty looks like or what coolness looks like, or the movies. Like, again, this is the time where he's trying to emulate something that he thinks is cool. So this is where you watch a lot of TV, a lot of those, pop culture things are going to come into play for this young man. So don't try to regulate the television. Like, don't try to say don't watch the TV. What you have to do is help him put it into perspective. But again, if he feels safe at home and in his home clan, then he's going to emulate that, and he's going to put TV into perspective. Now, if there's no conversation, no love, and things like that going on at home, like, he's going to find something to get into, right? Whether it's outside peers, or he's going to get into a television show, or he's going to get into something, because at this time he needs to feel that closeness of belonging, right? Right. So the last thing, emotional behavior, right? How are his emotions and behavior during this stage? Well, he'll become pretty self-conscious. We talked about that. He'll become pretty self-conscious about his peers. He'll be anxious about his behavior. Like, this is when he really, zits will be worrisome to him. He'll develop this kind of introspectiveness that he didn't have before, right? Like, he's kind of reflecting a lot about how he looks to the world, and how he compares to his world, to worlds and friendships and things like that. This is also the time where he'll become more rigid about tolerances. Like, think about it. Like, when kids are young, they'll play with anybody, right? But at this age, when they start to think about cliques and groups and those kind of things, like, they might not want to hang out with a certain kind of person, right? Doesn't mean that he's becoming racist. It just means that he's becoming aware of differences, and he's choosing a side. He's trying to choose a side because he's cognitively developing more. He becomes more critical about his friendships, and so where he used to play with Johnny down the street all the time, and now he doesn't want Johnny play with Johnny, and you're like, man, what happened? You used to love Johnny. Y'all used to go play in the ditch and do all this kind of. And he's like, nah, I don't play with Johnny anymore. It's not because Johnny did anything. It's because he's just in a different space and trying to figure himself out. Maybe Johnny doesn't fit into his worldview of himself. So in general, during this time, he'll become a worrier. Like he just become a worrier about his place in the world, whether or not he has independence, can he push back in the classroom, what degree of support he needs or wants from parents. It's a tough time. Stage 1 is a tough time. 9 to 12 is a tough time. Very emotional, and so have patience with the young man during that time. Have patience with him in class. Have patience with him at home. And if there happen to be a 9 to 12-year-old listening, have patience with your friend. All right. So that's it for this week, man. Again, how many of you know you don't have to be alone and be strong, right? So again, tell people about it. All things boys. Let me just wait for like a few seconds, see if anyone have any questions about what was talked about today, at all. All right. So again, this will be recorded, so you can go back and watch it anytime. Peace out. Have a great Saturday. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Remember, 2 weeks this time. See you in 2 weeks.